Let's talk about the resources and trade in Civilization VII because this also has changed significantly. And I know what you were thinking immediately. Mo, every time you are making a video, you are talking about how something has changed significantly. What gives? Well, the reality is, but that's what's happening. Like Civilization VII is more or less like a reboot of the Civ series than just another entry in that long-running franchise. And because of that, tons of things have changed. Even minor things will change completely. And yes, resources and trade are one of those. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about resources before we talk about the trading. Resources are back, of course, and they are still functioning more or less like in the previous games, which means they are all over the map. You have to build a city nearby, and then you have to acquire them by the city building a tile improvement on said resource. Keep in mind that your city has to grow organically into that direction because you don't have workers anymore. You cannot just acquire or put the resource into your influence sphere, send some workers out, and then acquire the resource. That doesn't work anymore. So you have to grow your city into that direction. And then when you build the tile improvement through the city on that field, you acquire the resource. But what has changed really with the resources? Well, there are now three different resource types, and they're functioning similar to the previous resource types in Civilization games, but again, different. The first one is the Empire resources. Those are bonuses which will be available to you everywhere on the map. No matter where you acquire them, you can just utilize them, like the old strategic resources in the previous Civ games, like let's say iron, right? You are getting iron, you can use iron wherever you want on the map. The second one, and that implies, by the way, global resources, are the city resources, and they are locally. So that means they will only be available to you in the city where you acquire them, or, well, through trade, but we will get to that. But let's just say for the moment here, you only have them available in your city where you acquire them, and they will give you bonuses which will help you to specialize on specific yields and will then push the city into a certain direction you want them to go. Let's say you want the city to be a city of science, a city of production, a city of culture, and so on and so forth, right? This is what the city resources are. They can push them into said direction. Very important, city resources, as the name is already implying, can only be used in cities and not in towns. And then we have the third resource, which are the bonus resources. Those are flat out yield buffs that you can move to any settlement, yes, including towns. They're very useful to boost them when it comes to happiness or when you want to accelerate the growth. Now, with all that said, there's a catch here. And that catch is now that every city has a certain amount of slots where you can put the resources in. If you are running out of slots, that means, well, you have to swap out an already existing resource, or you cannot put any more resources in that city. How do you get slots? How can you increase them? Unknown, at least at this point. We do know that the capital has like the most slots at the beginning, and then of course a town has only like one slot. Cities will have like 2+ more. Like again, the number is still in flux and we don't really know exactly how that works, but it is important to note that slots are now a thing and you have to think about strategically which resources you want to put there. Now, but what happens when you cannot acquire the resources you really want close to your cities? Well, good news, that's what trading is for. And trading still works very similar to the previous games, which means that if you want to trade inside your empire, you can already do that, right? But if you want to trade with outside factions like city-states or other nations, and we talked about this briefly in my diplomacy video, then you have to build up trust. They have to like you, and then you have to also sign a trade agreement. When you have done that, you can send out your merchants to establish a trade route. And what's really interesting here is that, yes, you can also now trade the resources you can put into your cities. Remember the times where you were just talking to one of the leaders and you were like, hey, I would like to have your whale. And then they were like, yeah, sure, have the whale here. And then the whale is magically popping up in your resource window wherever you are. Yeah, that's not happening anymore. You have to get the resources through the merchants. And yes, the merchants will still give you all the usual buffs you have been getting before that: money, research, production, and so on and so forth. But you have to establish a trade route. What is important to note with the trade routes now is that they have limitations in range, especially early on in the game. They are very limited, especially the land trade routes. So you cannot just go around the whole world at the beginning. That doesn't work anymore. Sea trade routes have a longer range they can fulfill at the beginning of the game. And that is all going away then with the modern age because, well, yes, we have the technology, right? We can just send our traders everywhere in the modern age. But in the two other ages before that, there are limitations on how far you can go. So you have to keep that in mind. And also, good news, you do not have to repeat the trade routes anymore. Remember that every 10, 14 turns or something, your merchant is coming to you and is asking you, what was I supposed to do again? And then you have to tell them to run the same route over and over and over again, right? It's now doing this automatically, so you only have to do it once till you, of course, want to change it. And then it's just auto renewing all the time, which is fantastic. And as always, this is very important. Yes, your traders can be plundered, and that means others can steal your resources. Keep that in mind. But I think those are some smaller changes on how they have been doing things from the previous Civ games. But I think this is a great improvement over the previous games, especially now that you don't have to click every time to repeat your stupid trade route. So that's fantastic, of course. But with that said, if you still have some questions on this topic, please let me know down below in the comments. And also, if you like this video, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel and you love strategy games, not just Civ, then you came to the right place because that's what we are focusing on here in the channel. And with that said, stay safe and I'll see you next time.